Peggy Vignocchi, Chairman of the Building Review Board. At this time, I ask members of the board to please introduce themselves.
Maddie Dugan, 3rd Ward.
Steuart Trey, 2nd Ward.
Monica Ruggles, 1st Ward.
And John Clair.
And would city staff members please introduce themselves? Thank you. The board is here tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, architects, neighbors, and interested citizens, to continue the long tradition that allows Lake Forest residents and businesses to work together to preserve the qualities and the unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. We recognize the personal importance of each petitioner's request. Our goal is to respect the needs and desires of property owners while balancing the interests of the community as a whole to preserve and enhance its architectural character and landscape streetscapes. For those of you who may not be familiar with the Building Review Board, the types of projects that come before this board are those in which the property owners are requesting a variance to allow a home that is larger than permitted by code, are seeking a demolition permit and approval of a replacement structure, or otherwise involve issues that could not fully be resolved by city staff. It is important to note that over 95% of building permits are issued by the city without the need for any board review. Thus, the board typically deals with the most challenging and sometimes controversial projects. The City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and fair meetings. To achieve that goal, the board has adopted meeting procedures, and all parties will be provided an opportunity to speak. These procedures are outlined on the agendas available at the back of the room. This meeting is also broadcast on cable television. Speaking on behalf of the entire board and city staff, our objective is to provide a review process that is thorough, fair, and without unnecessary delay. Our next item on our agenda will be the approval of the meeting minutes, which we will postpone till next month. So therefore, we will follow with item 3, which is a return, item 3 has also been withdrawn. Item 4, a continued consideration of a request for approval of storefront alterations, canopies, landscaping, and signage for 2 new businesses at 950 North Western Avenue. The owner is Westwood Square LLC. The proposed businesses are Westwood Bistro and 950 Whiskey Bar. The representatives are Jeffrey Schnoll and Ted Bufus from the Lake Forest Restaurant Group, Incorporated. Good evening.
This evening we're going to have our architect, Rich Gordon. He's going to present our project to you as far as the architectural benefits of the building. So I'm just going to let him start right on there and save some time.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is this working?
Rich, yeah.
Okay. My name is Rich Gordon. I'm with Interwork Architects. So let me give you a overview of this, what's happening on the site.
It's easier for you to take the microphone out and do that after the ways.
Okay, so what we have is the site here with Western Avenue and Woodland Avenue. The former Burger King site is where the Westwood Bistro is going, and then the 950 Whiskey Bar is going here along Western Avenue in what was the Kingmont, location. We are proposing an outdoor patio area out in front of the bistro in what is right now a landscaped location. Existing parking lot. This is the drive down to the parking garage underneath the building. So basically, we're looking at facade renovation for the Westwood Bistro restaurant, some minor modifications to the facade for the 950 Whiskey Bar, and then the landscaping in front of the bar and the landscaping in front of, at the patio location for Westwood Bistro. That's what we're here for tonight. Let me start with the 950 Whiskey Bar. What's happening here is right now there's the existing entrance here, and there's the existing entrance here. This is going to be the main entrance to the restaurant. This will be a secondary entrance, and there are windows here and here. Let me switch to the elevations so you can see those. The intention is for those windows these windows right now, we are going to take those windows out. They're going to become operable windows that will open up so that the entire expanse of the opening is opened up for natural ventilation, you know, to kind of open it up to the street. We're creating new steel canopies over these window locations, extending over the door on Western Avenue, and then turning the corner on the elevation, the north side, the north elevation, which faces the parking lot and the drive down to the parking garage. Those steel canopies are projected out, mounted to the face of the building, projected out with cable kicking back to the brick above. On the bistro restaurant, the former Burger King site, what we're proposing is a new stucco fascia. And what we're doing is we're leaving the existing mansard in place, and we're basically going to be building a vertical fascia off of that mansard. So the mansard's not going away. The mansard's going to be buried behind this new stucco fascia right here. Again, using the steel awning, carrying that motif around to this portion of the building. And on the corner, we are proposing this piece on the corner, which will be a wood. It's either going to be wood or we're also looking at more durable material like a hardy board, concrete board product that looks like wood. It's more durable. It's being used a lot. I don't know if you've come across it at all, but it's being used a lot now in houses. So the awning, the wood, and the stucco finish, all going over the existing mansard. I have actual samples here. This is, sorry for the size of the sample, but this is what I got from the manufacturer. This is the stucco. It's called oatmeal. I don't know if you want, I can pass that around. This is the proposed color that we are painting the steel awnings, steel canopies. And then the wood will be stained, oops, and then this is what we're proposing as the stain color on the wood. This is an approximate of the brick that's out there now. It's a very close match. Where we're gonna be using this is on the patio walls. Patio wall here, the garden wall. And I'll get back to that in a minute. Well, let me talk about that now. So the garden wall, brick 3 feet high with a wrought iron railing on top of the brick. And then at spots along the row, we are gonna be dropping the wrought iron down all the way to the ground. So you have, so we can break up the mass of the garden wall. So we're setting the garden wall at 3 feet, which is just above, about 6 inches above tabletop. Then the railing. So people sitting at the tables then will be able to see out, but they're gonna still be a little bit screened from people looking into the patio area. I'll quickly move on to the landscaping. The landscaping, you go back to the, start with the front of the whiskey bar here. So all the plantings that are out there now are gonna be replaced. And what we're proposing is some low evergreen shrubs to provide year-round color, and year-round life. And then interspersed in that are some perennials, some flowering shrubs, and some ground cover, so that we have additional color going on during, from spring through into fall. And as the windows are opened up, there's also a railing, sort of like a Juliet balcony, a wrought iron balcony rail. It's mounted on the wall, so it kind of reads like it's a balcony, but it's really not a balcony. And that will extend up to 3 feet above the floor in the bar area. Then, on the patio, what we have going on is there's a grade change. Right now, the sidewalk slopes down from the entrance to the restaurant. The sidewalk slopes down to Western Avenue about, at this point here, it's about 1.5 to 2 feet lower. What's gonna happen then is the patio is gonna be flush with the paving here, and we're gonna be using the same brick pavers that are out in this area here, extend them into the patio, for the patio. Again, the garden wall runs like this, rings around like this, and stops right here. Again, the plantings are gonna, well, let me start with, we have 3 trees, 3 evergreen trees here, and 1 multi-stemmed ornamental tree that sits right here. Our intention is to try and save those trees. We will be working with the city's arborist to see how those, what's viable for those trees, and work with him as far as whether or not those trees can be saved, should be saved, and if not, how we would replace them. But our intention is to try and save these trees. They'll be trimmed, cleaned up. A couple of these evergreens are, right now, the branches are kind of low down to the ground. We'll trim them up so that we can get some traffic and seating underneath them. There's some evergreen plantings along Western Avenue. Those will remain. So those shrubs will remain to screen the street. Additional shrubs, ground cover, perennial plantings will be added, again, using material that will provide color throughout the season. The plantings along the patio area here, along the sidewalk to the carriage walk to the parking lot, again, multicolor. We've also are indicating that we're going to have 3 urns, decorative urns in there, excuse me, that we'll use to provide seasonal annuals throughout the year to give different color throughout the season. Again, to provide a unified and varied color palette throughout the season. I also want to point out that there is existing irrigation system in both of these areas that will remain modified as required for the new planting layout. I think that's it for the buildings and landscaping, trying to keep it brief for you. We can move on to the signage.
Yeah, Joe Paulson with Beacon Sign Solutions out of Lake Bluff. I'm a resident here at Lake Forest. And briefly, I'll keep my comments on the signage briefly. There are 2 sets of channel letters proposed on the canopies on the north sides of each restaurant. So on the north side facing western of the 950 Whiskey Bar, and on the north side of the Westwood Bistro facing Western Avenue as well. And again, the height of the letters capped at 10 inches within the city standards, and the width will be determined by the spacing as the canopy is constructed. I just want to make a quick comment. Each letter would have a opaque face and side, meaning light does not transmit through the face and the sides out to the street. They'll be stood off from a backing, which would be the same color as the canopy, and light would be emitted out the back of the letter to reflect off the canopy. We have a sample of that letter if you'd like. And in this way, we minimize the lighting into the ambient area around, but we maximize the identity in the evening hours, particularly during dinner. The other thing that's proposed is a monument sign, and that would be in the existing space that the Burger King sign was. And the monument sign would be built in brick columns and base, the same color as the brick on the wall, which is consistent with the building wall. A panel inside the brick would hold similar letters, although smaller, to fit the space, with both names of the restaurants on 2 sides. It's perpendicular to Western, so the actual letters would face both north and south on the 2 sides of that letter. I think that's it on the signage. And Rich, is there more? Then Jeff, Ted? And we turn over to the committee.
Thank you. At this time, we will have city staff present their report on this petition.
Thank you, Chairman Vignocchi. This request is before the Building Review Board for design review. This project has been once before the Plan Commission and will be going back before the Plan Commission at the end of January 24th. And it's not unusual for projects to be reviewed concurrently by various boards to keep projects moving through the process. Sometimes it is difficult to separate the issues, so I do want to emphasize that what is before the Building Review Board is consideration of design-related issues. The proposed changes to the storefronts of both the former Burger King space and the King Moss space, the signage, and the landscaping. What isn't before you tonight is whether this use is appropriate. This is a commercial area. like many of the commercial areas in our downtown that is adjacent to residential. So the whole notion of impacts on the community or impacts on adjacent neighborhoods, those really are under the Plan Commission's purview, whether it's noise or activity or hours of operation or delivery or types of use. So again, I know it's difficult to separate, but you're really here only to talk about the design aspects. I do want to note for the record, you received a number of letters in your packet and a few more this evening. Some of those letters did speak to use issues, so we certainly can forward those same letters to the Plan Commission and put those in their packet so they also have the benefit of that information. As I mentioned, the project really has 3 elements, and you heard those elements described. The storefront alteration, I think many people look at this overall commercial building and think, gosh, it would be great if we could start over. I will say that the current owner of the building didn't build the building, so I hope I'm not stepping on any toes when I say this isn't necessarily a remarkable building or a building of note in our central business district. The building kind of is what it is. What you see before you is a situation where 2 new tenants, restaurant tenants who are 2 restaurant businesses that would be taking over spaces previously occupied by businesses are coming in and wanting to do something fairly minor, but something that calls attention to the fact that there is something new in the spaces. In the Burger King space, you heard the description of the mansard roof being modified. That roof is not being changed, but there will be a new wall framed in front of that with some accent elements at the corner. Both the Burger King space and the former King Ma space are proposed to have canopies. Those will extend about 3 feet off from the building and will be steel, again, simply to give a bit of an upgraded look, call a little bit of attention, and yet not be something so remarkably different that they would be wholly inconsistent with the existing building. The King Ma space, as you heard, will have replacement of some windows to allow some open air seating during the summer months. The railing will be added to simply, again, enhance that look and really allow those interior spaces to be used as a patio. Aside from the storefront alterations that are proposed, the second element is the landscaping. An outdoor seating area is proposed. Again, the specific use of that, whether an outdoor seating area is appropriate or not, that's a use issue for discussion by the Plan Commission. However, it is appropriate for the Building Review Board to look at the landscaping proposed, look at the appropriateness of the 3-foot brick wall that's proposed, and the appropriateness of the design proposed for the railing, wrought iron railing details. The third element is the signage. Signage is proposed just on the east-facing facades of both the former Burger King space and the King Ma space. The letters are backlit. There is a recommendation in your packet that we take some time once the canopies are in place to look at whether the 10-inch letter is appropriate, look at the height, the width, and the spacing, do a mock-up and really assess what is the right size and configuration of those letters. A monument sign is also proposed, 1 monument sign that will name both of the businesses. Burger King formerly had a monument sign in this location. The monument sign, I think, really does need to be looked at in the context of the patio, since that area, which is now open space, will be more infilled with the brick wall. You do have a series of 5 conditions or 5 recommendations in the staff report. We are recommending that the storefront modifications proposed, although not glorious, they do provide a way to update and call attention to the building. We are recommending approval of the conceptual landscape plan with a number of conditions, recommending approval of the signage on the canopies, subject to conditions and further review by a board subcommittee, and then suggesting that the monument sign, we really wait for the patio to take shape, bring that back to you with some further details, and then if any lighting is proposed, and lighting is not currently proposed, but if there is exterior lighting proposed, that would come back to you as part of a lighting plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kathy. This time, we will take it to the board for any questions or requests for clarifications from the board to the petitioner or to city staff. I'd like to start with asking you to clarify some questions regarding the seating area, the outdoor area. I know you said that it was going to be at the same elevation of the door, so that, okay. And then, so that whole paver area will be at that elevation?
Yes.
Okay. And then the wall, the new wall that you're building, the new stone or brick fence, will that taper down, or will that maintain its top elevation throughout? Because
It'll be level with the patio. So as the sidewalk slopes away, the wall gets
well, you'll have more wall, right?
You'll have
Okay.
more wall.
So the top elevation is what gets maintained?
top elevation gets maintained.
Okay,
All the way up to Western.
right. So now that's almost 5 feet then, up at, right at that corner where the,
It's about
cobbles.
where it
yeah,
bends.
it's at that corner.
That's about
What I saw, there was like maybe 1.5 foot at
Yeah,
least.
yeah, it's about a foot and
Okay.
a half at the corner where it bends.
Okay,
And there'll also be the landscaping will be in front of it too, so that'll help soften the effect of the wall.
how much square footage of patio is there in terms of the pavers?
What I don't know off the top of my head. It's, see if I can figure that out for you real quick.
That's okay.
Probably about 600 square feet.
Okay. And I have a question about the canopies. How high above the windows will the canopy rest?
Just slightly above those windows.
Okay.
The windows, I believe, are at 8 feet, and the bottom of the canopy is right about that. At that.
So like above the soldier course, or?
Yeah.
Okay. You were talking about building a barricade around the rooftop units. Will that go all the way around or just on the north face?
Well, I think we're thinking right now just on the north face.
And not the
It
west?
may turn, onto the west. We could turn it onto the west, maybe. I don't know. From a sightline standpoint, I don't know that it's gonna be, if they're visible from the west, but if we need to, we can return it along the west side. But certainly along the north,
Right,
and it could be along the west.
okay.
I could just add, the screening of rooftop mechanical units is usually something that's required as part of a special use permit, so that will receive further attention.
Great, thank you.
And they're not showing them because they don't know exactly where they're going to be at this point, or are they
Well, we're
Are
showing-
they indicated on these
We're
drawings?
showing
They are.
something going right here.
That's part of your parapet that you're doing
Yeah.
over the existing parapet, right? So you're not raising the height of that, you're applying it,
Well, right now, the mansard stops right here.
oh, I see, okay, so you're
There's this
continuing
wall
it
here.
across
The
the
screen
north.
would be,
But it's a different material.
Got it.
that would be mounted probably it could be mounted to the unit itself. So that'll be back from this wall. It would, depending upon where the units wind up being located. They will probably be set back as well from the wall.
I have a question on the, you plan to put, you're building a vertical wall to cover the existing mansard.
Yes.
Is that a frame wall?
Yes.
Okay, and what, plywood, and then you'd lay this, is it real stucco you're gonna put
Yes,
on it?
it's real stucco.
You'd lay that on
On lath on top of the.
A lath on top, but on top of some plywood or something
Yes.
like that? Okay, how do you block the top in that the mansard is on an angle away from vertical, and this would be vertical, so you'd have a V
Right.
coming down, and how do you prevent leaves, debris, branches and stuff from,
We'd be building a rooftop.
it'll cover
So
that?
this is solid,
It
yes.
encloses
Yeah,
it,
okay,
right.
all right, okay, I get you.
Stucco up to here, and then this would be.
Okay,
roofing
yeah, and that would
material.
block it, yeah, okay.
And then there's a metal coping
Yes.
connecting the two?
Yes, and then it's pitching so that it'll drain back down onto the roof.
Is that entire roof metal, or is that going to be some membrane roof that
This-
just
this
has metal
portion of it?
flashing? Yes.
It would probably be membrane,
And then you'll have a coping to either side of that
Yes.
to secure it?
yes.
So then, are you expecting the existing roof drains to handle that additional water?
Yes, but we're not talking about a lot of water, a lot of
Okay.
additional water, so it shouldn't be a problem.
Continuing on with the whole stucco theme of that piece, what are, you're indicating reveals on the elevation?
Yes.
What would those be made of?
They would just be cut into the stucco. So it would just be
saw cut?
a stucco, a half-inch deep reveal.
Okay, because they're shown a pretty wide on the elevations themselves, so it looks like they're almost like a channel of some sort.
It will be probably about an inch wide and maybe a quarter inch to a half an inch deep.
And your choice of the finish of the stucco, it's a pretty textured type of stucco. Is that, why did you go ahead with that finish?
It's sort of a natural stucco finish,
As opposed to a smooth or a
It's-
Yeah,
dash?
here it is.
it's like a
Yeah, I
it's like a, yeah, it's like a
understand.
stippled finish.
Those reveals, are they there as control joints of any kind, or are they an aesthetic decision?
It's more of an aesthetic thing.
And it's
I
just
mean,
the
we
same,
are, some of them will be control joints, but,
but it's not a metal reveal that's,
No.
it's just a change in the same plane? It's
Yes.
the same color?
yes. So it
It's,
just provides a shadow.
it's an inch wide, and it's how deep, a half inch or so?
Yeah, no more than a half an inch deep. It's just to provide, it provides a shadow line and breaks up the mass of the fascia.
I had a couple of questions. On the drawings, it looks like the signs are going to be on the east elevations of both
Yes.
buildings, and I believe you said north. So I just wanted to make sure.
No, the
we're
sign is
talking-
not.
I think I may have said north, and it is the east.
Okay,
elevation.
all
Just
right.
east.
I'm a little confused about the brick wall around the patio. Where it, on the north elevation of that wall, along the parking lot,
Okay.
it will end at the sidewalk at Western Avenue?
It doesn't-
And just end
No,
there?
no, it turns, let me show you.
So it ends at that curve in the patio itself?
Yes.
And then the landscaping will taper down from there to the level of the sidewalk?
Let me get back to the landscape plan, it does show you. Okay, so the wall
Yep.
starts here.
Yep,
It's along this way, bends, and then turns here,
okay,
and then curves and ends right here.
all right.
And at that point, the trees and the landscaping provide the edge of
Okay.
the brick pavers at this point, and there is a wall right here, that exists right now, that,
Goes down into the parking.
Right.
Okay, but on the north side, along the parking space, okay, wall,
This.
now it stops.
yes.
And then from there east, it just tapers down naturally with the landscape.
The wall, again, the wall stays at the same height relative to the patio.
Okay,
So the top of the wall is level. What pitches then is, there'll be a foundation wall, and the ground will taper down along there. At this point, it's not dropping too much, so the bulk of the drop is along here, and from this point, as it turns around this way, it's fairly level. I think there might be a slight drop off, but it continues to drop this way But as,
Okay.
Well, you said it turns. Does the whole wall turns? Is there also a wall that continues, or does it end right there?
no, the wall continues, wraps
That
around
way,
this
but
curve.
doesn't-
But not
But-
toward western, not straight east?
No, it stops right
I think
here.
that was your
It
question.
Stops
Yes,
right
right,
here,
okay.
stops right here and turns.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
there's no wall here.
Okay, so that, where there's no wall, it's just gradual landscaping sloping down to the,
Yes,
okay.
to the sidewalk along
Okay,
Western.
that's,
Okay.
thank you, Peggy, that
Yeah.
was. And is a 3-foot wall high enough to block headlights from blaring at the people on the patio as they pull into those parking spaces?
Yes. Yeah, the car's headlights are,
Right, and how high is the brick?
the brick is 3 feet high.
Okay, all right. And the wrought iron railings along that, are they gonna be the same material as the balcony, the
Yes.
Juliet?
The Juliet balconies, yeah.
Okay,
same
and are they gonna be black, just plain
black
black wrought iron?
wrought iron.
Okay, so
Yeah,
the
there's
palette
there's,
will work.
yeah, there's a little detail to them.
Right.
I don't know if you saw the detail on.
I'm a little concerned about your choice of brick color. Well, let me back up. I applaud you for bringing all the samples, because that's really key to our decision-making. But I'm a little concerned. I think the building is maybe a little darker than that.
This one brick is lighter.
Yeah,
What we would probably do is pull this light brick out of the blend
okay.
so that it would be all the darker ones. The brick that's on there is no longer available.
Okay, that was,
Right, so we're trying to find something as close a match to it as we can. So I had my brick supplier go out there, and this was the match. And what
Okay.
he actually said, he actually suggested that for tonight, if I wanted to, I could pull this one off and replace it with another one of these. So we could pull this one out of the blend if
and
need
your
be.
plan is that the monument sign will be made out of the same?
The same brick, yes.
Same brick, okay. I think that's it for now for me.
I have one question on the monument sign. Do you plan any lighting on the monument sign? Ground lighting or?
Yeah, at this point, there's no ground lighting planned. It's backlit letters similar to.
Even the monument sign would be backlit?
Right.
Yeah, okay, all right.
That's the intention as of now.
But not lit from behind with applied letters. You'd be cutting out from that
The
metal.
letters would be extended from the monument, and they'd be backlit, similar to what you see here. And instead of having the panel is necessary because of the canopy, they're setting at the edge of the canopy. In the monument sign, the monument face serves as the backsplash itself.
Okay, so they'd just be smaller versions of
Small
the-
versions of the
Yes,
same.
okay, all right, thank you.
And on this wall that's sloping, you are going to express some of the concrete foundation as it
Yes.
gets to the
Yeah.
lower grade, and about how much of that's going to be exposed?
We could step the brick down
I
with
was
it.
going to suggest
Yeah.
that, and I
but-
don't know what the landscaping is going to be sufficient to cover that year-round, but
If
what
you want,
I
we-
really don't want to see is 2 feet
2
of
feet of
concrete, and especially as it expresses itself along that whole Western Avenue. As long as you're hitting some grade along there that's consistent, and you can step
we
it in a
can-
couple of 1-foot increments and get yourself down to where the
Yeah.
concrete is insignificant.
Typically, we like to keep brick 4 to 6 inches
Sure.
off.
Well, but there you're not worried about any kind of water infiltration against it either. So
No.
theoretically, this could be brick that goes all the way to
All the way
grade.
down,
And that would be my recommendation, if
Yeah.
you feel that's a dense enough brick that it would handle any kind of
We
moisture.
will, so we can step it down. I mean, there will be portions where there will be, just because,
Yeah.
we can't be stepping, we don't want to step it every, 2 feet or so, but once we get to a certain point, 6, 8, or 12 inches, then we'll drop it down to grade.
And then on this rail, occasionally you break the brick wall and open it up to some rail.
Mhm.
Is that a operable gate?
No,
So that's gonna be fixed.
That's gonna be fixed.
So
So
the
the
only
only
place
in and
that
out-
anybody can get in and out is across the front entry of the,
Yes.
of the restaurant, and they
Yes.
cannot climb out or get out any other way.
No.
So at that area, the entrance to the patio, is that a fireplace that you're indicating?
We are thinking of a fire pit area.
A fire pit or a fire? Is there
that
a
a
fire
whole-
pit
It was
and a
just
fireplace?
fabricated, sort of like a.
No, it's a fire pit.
Oh, that is?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about at the entrance?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, that's the host stand.
That's a
And this is the
hostess,
fire pit
and then
over
there's
there.
a fire pit, the circular
circular
fire
thing,
fire pit.
And that's a gas, obviously a gas
Yes.
pit.
And
And that's, is that
I'm
something
sorry.
in our purview at
I
all,
don't
or
know.
does that fall into planning?
Certainly from a design perspective.
Well, the
it
appropriateness
is.
of it is something that I think.
From a code perspective, we may need to have a second exit out of this patio
That
area.
was what I was gonna
That's not
ask.
something that we know the answer to right now, and certainly any type of, a gas fire pit. I think we had talked about it as a seating, a group seating
Group
area, and
seating
whether
area.
that's a fire pit or some other element, I think is
Right.
still being
Did
discussed.
you entertain a water element or something there instead of the fire pit? Would that be something for consideration on your end?
Possible.
Okay.
And when the petition was here last month, there was some seating proposed on Western in front of the whiskey bar. Is that something that
That's
you've
go- that's-
taken
that's
out? Okay.
Yeah. Now, instead, what we're doing is we're just opening up those windows to kind of give you the feel of being
Okay.
outdoor seating.
And I think we're gonna bounce back and forth, but, those windows slide and become a grouping of one window, or do they bifold?
I think they're gonna bifold
And they'll be
and fold
completely
back
wide
up
open against the wall and
Right.
inside. And then that rail will be 3 feet off the floor inside, and is actually,
Yes.
it is actually a rail to keep people from coming through
Coming
or
out.
falling through, and that,
Right.
in this case maybe. And then I think somebody mentioned that the main entrance, is that inside the canopy, turning right with the double doors? So that's considered the main entrance, and that's where the hostess will be greeting people. And then the other entrance that's off of Western, near the sign, I guess, how do you keep people from knowing that, well, how does that door function? And how do you keep people from misunderstanding that that's not the entrance? Is that something that's emergency exit that's closed?
Well, we're gonna have it as it locked from the outside, but it has a push bar to it, so. It'd be more of an exit.
Got it.
I want to jump back to the monument sign. I thought I had read that it wasn't the brick, it was going to be a Lannon stone or something a different stone.
Yeah, in the original submission, we had spec'd Lannon stone and
Okay.
limestone caps, and then as we reviewed this earlier this week, the intention is to match the brick, same as the wall.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for the
And they
record,
just
you're proposing now to match the brick for the monument sign?
Right. We had
Thank
not
you.
selected the brick at that time, so
Okay.
we spec'd Lannon.
Thank you.
Going back to the elevation of the 950 Whiskey Bar and the door onto Western, is that a glass side light to the left of it?
Yes. That's as it is right now.
Is that just because of you're working within the existing rough opening and using stock sizes?
Yes.
Okay. And okay. Is there some reason you didn't bring that side light all the way down to the ground
That's
to
the way it
match
is
the
right
door? That's the way it is right
Yes.
now?
Yeah, that is,
That's the existing door that's
existing
staying
door
there?
sign, yes.
And what looks like it might be a light gray or a silver for those mullions in the door, that's really the darker gray that you passed around?
It's, I believe what's there now is like a dark bronze anodized.
Okay.
That's,
And you'll be replacing your bifold doors with something to match those?
yes,
Few existing things.
yes.
And what's underneath the canopy if I was to look up?
It's open, so there'll be, it'll be like an open trellis framework.
I'm not sure I understood that. So if I'm looking at your detail 1, the 950 canopy section.
So there's a channel that frames it.
Whoops.
So about how many bars then, and what's the dimension of each of those?
The spacing on it would probably be somewhere around 2 feet.
Do you have a detail on that or no?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Okay.
So what we have is we have a steel channel that rims it on all 3 sides, and then there'd be channels coming out, like joists framing out.
And then your hangers on that that's somehow bolted to something, what am I seeing underneath that? An occasional plate or?
Yes. So there'd be a plate mounted.
Will I see the underside of that plate, or is it something that's just connected to one of the many?
The plate would be connected to the top of the channels,
And you don't
so you wouldn't see them
anything from the underside?
And then there'd be another plate that's mounted to the face of the wall.
And what are those ladder members, those cross members? What is the material on those?
You talking
Lumber? The open lattice or
Those are
whatever.
steel, those would be steel channels.
That's a steel channel,
Steel
complete,
channel,
a
painted steel
complete
channel.
closed steel channel.
Yes.
So from a maintenance standpoint, we don't have to concern ourselves with that.
I guess I'm a little confused by that then. So you have a wood soffit underneath the canopies at the bistro,
Yes.
at those soffits. So that is all enclosed. Those soffits are enclosed. You have that wood. So when you look, you're walking underneath it, you look up and you see a wood soffit below
Yes.
it. But for all those other canopies that are extending over the windows on Western at the whiskey bar, those are not closed, they're open, so you're looking up and you're just seeing structural,
Right.
repetitive members.
Right.
And also half of this one, I'm guessing
Right,
half of that
so-
is.
And, okay, so
this
there's.
has an enclosed, this is the existing soffit right now, and
Mm-hmm.
then this would be the open frame.
And you're not concerned about birds nesting up in there, or just it looking?
Yeah, so
It's
only
hollow.
gonna be an inch and a half wide or so piece
No,
of
it's not
steel.
hollow, it's a completely encased
It's
shell
not-
section.
It is, okay, so it is enclosed.
Yeah,
The cross member, but between members, there's open space.
It's open, right.
So it's like a ladder turned
Yes.
horizontally.
Yeah.
I'm still confused about
Right, they're just like long.
But they're open, so you
Mhm.
have gaps all
Mhm. Mhm.
inside of it.
Right.
That way if snow falls, it falls through instead of
Yeah.
drifting up on it.
What is happening on the south face of the bistro, the part that's into the existing interior courtyard?
Yeah, each of these spaces then would be open.
You mean,
Are there any
So the
doors?
cross
Are you
members
changing anything there?
of steel.
no, once
And they
that, all we're doing is extending the canopy up to the point where it meets the, extending the new stucco fascia. You're talking about, are you talking about for the whiskey bar, or are you talking about for the
The bistro?
bistro? So it's, at this point here, it meets the existing building and stops. And then the storefront continues back behind, and we're not touching any of that.
Okay.
So all we're doing is this up to the point where it hits the existing building.
Picture this as a ladder.
Are you proposing any new fencing around the perimeter of the project?
Yes, I think that's,
This is what the
it's already,
There is an existing fence there now.
Right.
A new fence has been ordered, and a permit has been applied for with the city already a couple weeks ago.
Okay, and that'll take care of which fence, the
That'll be
west or the north? or
That'll be
both?
the north fence.
Okay.
And the fence that faces the west is gonna be repaired under the same, contract.
Okay.
And the wood trim that's under the soffit, what kind of wood trim? Is that plywood trim? Is that existing wood trim there that's,
That's existing trim there.
and does it need any kind of
Yeah,
application to
it'll be
spin it
patched
up?
and painted.
Okay. And the addition to this canopy, as it slightly covers the ramp down to the parking garage, is there any concern of height in any kind of vehicle that might be taller than that
No.
space? It shows in your north elevation,
Yeah.
number 1 right there. Right there. The very
Yeah, I think
farthest,
At this point,
Yes.
we're probably a good 12 feet.
and the parking garage doors are probably 8.
I think are 8, yeah, so.
And the wood slats that you'd suggested might be a hardy plank or something like that. Is there a horizontal lap dimension? Is this,
We're looking at either a narrow board lap, so like a 4-inch exposure,
okay?
or possibly a tongue and groove. That would be somewhere, it would be but it would still be a thin
4-inch and have reveals?
Yeah.
I would suggest that would be
Yeah,
my preference, but.
I wouldn't want to go to an 8 or a 12-inch board.
No, but I think the tongue and groove might, as long as that groove is expressed.
Yes,
I
like
think
every
that
4
would be
inches.
my preference, rather than see it in a lap, where you kind of evokes a little bit more
Yeah, that's what
residential than.
I'm leaning towards a tongue and groove myself.
And I guess maybe this is a question, well, for staff or somebody, but we now have a monument sign replacing one for one particular tenant, Burger King, but is there a monument sign for the rest of this building at all? And are we opening a can of worms by just having this monument sign for a building specific for one tenant?
The original signage plan for the building approved one monument sign, and it was for a business in that Burger King space. At the southeast corner of the overall building, there is a shingle sign with
Right.
Other
the
tenants?
names of multiple businesses. So that is kind of the overall directory sign.
Okay.
And on the on the canopy over the entrance, it just lists the one, right now, just lists the one business that's on the interior of the courtyard.
Correct.
And the businesses that face have signs on the face of the building.
So if the owner of the property was to come forward with an overall new signage plan, the board would have the opportunity to look at all that. Because this is a multi-tenant complex, it's really approved as an overall signage component, or as you're seeing tonight with specific replacements for individual tenants.
Okay.
So it's different than if it was a single
Well,
tenant
we're gonna
building.
table that monument sign for tonight anyhow, but had that question.
Well, maybe, has the petitioner done the calculations regarding the signage and submitted that information? Do we know if have we calculated whether we're within the,
Because this is a multi-tenant building, the provisions in the code for individual buildings don't align directly with the signage of this building because you have multiple signs. I think that's why we wanted some time to really look at the monument sign, look at the size of the previous Burger King sign, and then look at the space that's left after this patio was staked out. So the numbers don't relate directly from the code to this type of a development. It really is an overall signage plan.
I think you stated your conditions are, once the canopies are up, you would then ask the petitioner to put a mock-up of, above the canopies of what he is thinking about in height and width, et cetera. And so that all of this would come back to the building review board.
What we're recommending with respect to the lettering on the canopy, staff recommendation is that you approve the concept for the individual letters for
Yeah.
the backer
backlighting.
panel and the backlighting, but that, as you do with other signage, that perhaps you appoint a subcommittee that works with staff to look at a mock-up of the sign to make
Right.
sure the height, the spacing, and the width of the letters is appropriate once those canopies get in place.
Yes.
It's tough to just know that a 10-inch tall letter is appropriate without seeing it up there.
I understand, okay, thank you.
And these letters are gonna be mounted on the outside edge of the face of this ladder canopy that projects out. And as we get underneath this thing and it is open, we have the ability to look up through. And I saw this one single letter that had a backing, but as a complete sign, is there a solid backing, or as we're looking through this from the backside, are we seeing each letter with its own individual
Yeah,
back?
no,
And
on
the-
the
and
bottom
those
connecting
clips that
all of
hold
the
it
letters,
together.
there's an aluminum rail that would go the length of the canopy.
Okay, so
This,
that's,
this rail then gets mounted to the face of the canopy, so the piece of steel, the edge piece of steel, where the tubular channel sits here, this sits on top of it, and then the letters here, and the back of the piece
Yeah.
here.
But
Is
each,
the- is the
to
back-
John's point, each letter would have that, an enlarged version of that letter as a backing.
Or is the
Yeah.
backer solid?
And
No, the backer is each individual
as
letter.
individual, yeah.
Right.
and each individual letter is held up by these, looks like
Pins.
white pins
By
or
this,
something.
the channel on the bottom.
So as we get underneath this canopy, we're gonna look up and see
What
half a
you'll-
dozen pins holding up each individual letter from the backing to the letter
You'll see,
itself.
Yeah.
You would, as you look up at, they'd be mounted off the face, so they look like they're being mounted off the face of the.
I get, yes, in reality and in probably pure elevation, but my concern at this point is how contrived and busy is that going to look from the human perspective of turning your head and looking up? Now, I know people don't, they're not there to explore the underbelly, but it presents itself to anybody that might. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
What's the width?
Yeah.
What's the width on this channel, on this?
It's approximately 3.5. Yeah, and Rich, the channel rests on top of the canopy, not on the face. Yeah.
So the letters would be just sticking out in front of, if the face of the face of the channel would be somewhere out here.
The face of the
The face
channel
of the
lines up with this
The face of the
box.
canopy lines up with the box, or perhaps out a little bit out in front of the box. So,
Okay, so they're free floating.
They're,
free
right.
floating, yeah, you see the pins, but I don't think it's anything that's, I mean, the pins are, what's the size on those?
You know,
And the only way to suggest
Eighth
that these
inch.
pins might be obscured from anybody's vision is to have a continuous metal piece.
Right.
Have you ever done that, or is that something that,
we've seen that done
Consider-
before. It's not, it's really just an aesthetic question.
can that aesthetic question be answered after the fact?
Sure.
So if we all go out there and after we've approved a mock-up and then the reality comes in there and we'll look up and go, oh my God, I missed this.
Yeah,
Is this something that could be put on later at a very easy?
yeah, it's relatively straightforward to put on
24
later.
gauge piece of metal that
Yeah.
you put up and And then all of a sudden, now the only issue that anybody'd have to concern themselves are what birds are nesting in on top of that metal.
Right. That gets to the nest, that gets to the nesting problem, right.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get my head around it, that's all.
Could the pins, the mounting pins not be white?
Yeah, they can be whatever color.
That
we
might
would-
also.
Maybe that's less obtrusive to be white than the other way, but they're there.
But that's something that we could look at
Sure.
during a mock-up.
Can that be part of the mock-up to see
Sure, we
the
can-
reality of this?
right.
Okay. And it might be nothing, honestly, and it might be so obscure that it's not worth toying with, but it's
Yeah,
reality.
my gut kind of tells me that it's not going to be anything that's really
Glaring.
glaring, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
that's been my, my confusion about the whole canopies. When I look at the elevations, it just seemed to me that they were gonna be closed canopies, just a really simple looking closed canopy. Then when you were walking beneath it, you wouldn't see the letters above, it would all be obscured. And now, and obviously now it's been pointed out that that's not the case, so you have some type of repetitive members coming across, so that makes me wonder if it's going to be too busy when you're walking underneath it, and what are you gonna see on top of, the letters and all, so, because it's not indicated, there's nothing in plan that shows me what the top of that canopy is, so that's why I assumed it was just a solid soffit.
So,
And could
what
the-
color is the canopy?
Is that gray?
That dark gray.
Yeah, dark.
And you have choices of alignment. You can align the rail with the edge of the canopy. You can align the face of the letter with the
That's
edge
what
of
I
the
was gonna
canopy.
ask.
You have a choice of,
If you pulled your canopy out to cover the underside,
Yeah.
things could still go through, and now you've blocked any kind of vision to the pegs, pins, whatever you call it.
yeah, except that the canopy is open from the underneath and.
Well,
as you
but
walk
you could
underneath
make
it.
that first portion of that
Closed,
face of the
right.
canopy, rather than 3
Yeah.
inches, it could be 6 inches,
Yeah,
and you'd never see
Exactly.
it. So, consider that as a design challenge and an issue that we'd, and however thick you want to make that first piece to cover up any nasties that might not. Okay. I think I'm clear. Yeah.
Along the same lines as we're talking the aesthetics and that, did you give consideration to something other than the stucco material that you're using for that facade? I know Monica had discussed, I don't know if that was your concern on maybe the finish on it, if it lines up well with, what we're doing here. And I know that we received a letter from the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation with a concern regarding that stucco.
Okay, that I
haven't
have not
seen.
seen, no.
Okay. Is that available? Okay. It's one paragraph. I'm happy to just read it here. It says, "The existing building has no real architectural pedigree and is certainly dated, and as such presents challenges to the designer in upgrading it for the new use. We are concerned that the stucco-over approach proposed for the mansard roof evokes a strip mall vernacular not desirable in this context. A more renovation-oriented direction to facade upgrades might be more beneficial if the budget doesn't allow a comprehensive makeover. In the context of the project's immediate surroundings, nearby historic neighborhoods, and the desirable Lake Forest feel, which is somewhat lacking, we are apprehensive about the facade changes proposed. We hope that the petitioner will revisit the changes in a manner that is more reminiscent and evocative of restrained good taste, which the sensitive Lake Forest resident can look upon as a kind of comfort amidst the typical strip mall banality found in many other communities. Thank you for your consideration of our observations." And this was submitted today from the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation. So my question to you is, regarding this, and then did you consider any other materials where you're going to be using the stucco? Could you please step forward and use the microphone each time? Thank you, sorry.
No, actually, we did not.
Okay.
However, there is a mix on that with the stucco. There is a wood element to it, so it's kind of mixed up. It's only a small portion of it is the stucco, and then the corner has a wood, or we're going with some other material that might be a little bit more durable. So it's gonna only be What's the material, Rich, that we were talking about? Yeah,
How much of it's
Har-
stucco? A lot.
hardling?
Like, you said a hardy board?
Yeah.
But it looks like there's a fair amount of stucco that,
Yes.
Well, there is a fair amount of stucco, but it's mixed. I mean, we have it so it's broken up part way through, so it's not, I don't think it really looks like a strip mall. I think it looks a lot higher end than a strip mall would look. And I mean, I think they're looking at a elevation on a drawing versus how it's actually gonna look in real life.
The reality is we're working with, you know, you want a material that's relatively lightweight because we're hanging it off of the existing mansard.
okay.
So, you know, at that point, we're somewhat limited as to what we can do. We can do wood, we can do metal, we can do, or we can do stucco. So,
Okay.
without having to do a lot of structural gymnastics to carry anything more. We certainly can't do brick.
Thank you. What are the plates that will hold the cables for the canopy? About how large will those be?
I don't know, but we're probably talking something that's no more than 6 inches square,
Okay.
6 or 8 inches maybe.
And then will they be painted
Yeah.
the same? Okay.
Yes.
Other questions? That's okay. Do we have any further questions from the board at this moment? Okay. At this time, we would allow public testimony. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak regarding this petition, you may step forward. Please use the podium, and please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Julian. I live at 190 Atteridge Road. I'm speaking on behalf of not only myself, but several neighbors who couldn't be here for various reasons, conflicts, the flu, lots of things. I can tell you that, and mindful of Kathy's admonition that your purview is really the design, I have 3 comments. They all ultimately go to the aesthetics of the project, although there obviously are mixtures between what's aesthetic and what may be use. But in any event, these all do ultimately drive to the design of the project. In speaking to the neighbors, the biggest concern is the notion that any outdoor seating whatsoever is not consistent with the character of the neighborhood. You know, it may be a beautiful design, but this is the wrong place for it. I know in the context of your reviews, you look not only at the elements as you see them now, you look at them in the character of the entire neighborhood. This was recently designated as, I think you know, an historic neighborhood. This is a sleepy sleepy single-family home neighborhood. We don't have outdoor commercial activity spilling out onto the streets. This isn't Lincoln Park in Chicago. Look in our own town, where is outdoor seating for any restaurant? You know, go to Francesca's, go to what used to be Southgate, now Marketplace, go to the Grill, go to, I think, even Ferentino's. They have outdoor seating. Well, where's the closest single-family home? People generally who live in single-family homes don't want to have commercial activity rolling out into the street. As nice as it may look to you, this is commercial activity rolling out into the street. And the general feeling from the vast majority of the neighbors I've spoken to in the West Park neighborhood, which is what is immediately adjacent, sharing a boundary line with this property, is that this is just not appropriate from a visual standpoint and other standpoints. So that is the #1 biggest concern on the property. The second concern is, and this I think could be addressed, should you entertain outdoor seating, and as I restate, that's a big problem. I know that Ted and Jeff had indicated in, I believe it was a meeting here, it might have been the planning board, I'm not certain, that mindful of concerns about neighbors' privacy and noise concerns, for those who live close to it, that any outdoor seating would generate, they would do everything reasonable to try and address any outdoor or any, trying to address any noise issues or privacy issues in their design. As I look at the designs they have, and they look very nice, the only element I see that has anything to do, as far as I can tell, with a noise consideration is the wall. The wall is 3 feet tall. I don't think that does, I think it does very little for any of the noise that may be generated from an outdoor restaurant seating activity, the clinging, the clanging, and the aesthetic we're talking about is either consider, and I'm not sure that this would look good or not, I'm just proposing, the wall has to be a different height, or maybe you could consider some element on top of the wall, in front of the wall, on the other side, which could be some plants or some sort of vegetation element to try and absorb some of that noise, because 3 feet is not going to do it. You know, the noise takes place up here. It doesn't take place down on the floor. So that's something I think the Building Review Board has to consider strongly. And my last point really is, and I was glad to hear John's comment, and honestly, the fire element, when I walked around and talked to people in the neighborhood, and it may offend some people, but there seemed to be this general notion of having any sort of outdoor fire pit, fire element, whatever you call it. It seemed to evoke an image of people sitting around a garbage can at night and drinking. I'm afraid that's the image that people get. And this, again, is a single-family neighborhood. They're not looking to have people standing around drinking at a fire on some cool spring night or autumn night. When John suggested a water element, I can tell you if there was consideration of outdoor seating, that would go a long way toward addressing that issue, because that fire element, and no pun intended, was a real hot button with a lot of people I spoke with in the neighborhood. Those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, I'm Gwen Kent. I'm a long-standing resident, 20 years. I live at 13 South June Terrace, and I've been following this project a little bit because this was my old neighborhood and I'm not too far away. I'm well done, Jeff and Ted, right? Very well done. I think our city needs restaurants. We need more tax dollars. A lot of our residents go to other towns to spend their money for dinner, and that's certainly the case. A lot of our residents go to Highland Park, Bannockburn, Lincolnshire. It'd be nice to get some more restaurant and tax dollars in our town. So I like it. Thanks. Good job, Claire.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak? Hearing none. Would the petitioner care for any comments regarding any of the...
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to talk about on the patio, there is going to be vegetation on the north side of the wall that will do some of the blocking in addition to the wall, which was a concern, and it does show it on the plan that we have a whole line of trees and plants in different colors for the different seasons and additionally as a noise blocker. So that is, it has been addressed into the plan.
I think there was also a comment regarding, you know, a higher elevation for that.
I don't think it would look good if you put too high of a wall. We did a wall that's higher than the tabletop, so you can see out, but your noise level will be underneath the wall, and then we have the wrought iron above it, and then additionally, we have plants on the other side of the wall, which eventually will grow higher than the wall is, exactly.
Is the plan to have those plants cover the whole wall facade?
Well, it's gonna go all the way down. It's really separated in certain areas, but yeah, it's gonna have, all the way down that entire north wall, there's gonna be vegetation.
But what you're showing is low evergreen ground cover, low spreading perennials, plantings and ornamental urns. You're not showing anything of any height. You're just, it's foundation planting more or less that's existing.
At this point, but we, you know, that's also
Okay.
open for consideration on our end.
Madam Chairman, can I ask a question that we didn't bring up, but there is a fence that's existing, a stockade fence that's existing the other side, the north end of the property. Is that something that this petitioner has?
I did ask about the fencing. It's all being repaired right now under current.
Has a permit out, and
Permit.
a new drawing has been submitted
And
to
it's
the.
a 6-foot stockade fence that's replacing
We-
the
The existing fence on the west side, I believe I was told, is being repaired.
It's gonna be repaired under the same contract, but the north fence is,
North
seeking to be replaced with a 7-foot fence versus a 6-foot, and the code does allow up to a 7-foot
And
fence.
that's just a cedar stockade
The
fence?
cedar stock fence, yeah. It's gonna be a nice cedar fence. So that'll give additional, because that's the same side as the patio as well.
And we are allowed final questions at this point, so. Thank you.
Can I ask a question of the neighbor, John Gillian? That fence, in your estimation, does that do anything to absorb headlights from cars, noise from pedestrians walking to and from the restaurant that's currently there, or any visual screening?
Yeah, I would say that the fence properly maintained would do, and I was glad to.
Would you mind stepping forward to the microphone again? Thank you so much.
You know,
I was glad, is this on?
Yep.
I was glad to hear Jeff say that, that they were looking to, because it wasn't in the plans, that they're
Right.
going to do something with that fence, and that is critical. Properly maintained, that fence would go a long way toward absorbing sound and blocking lights. But I can tell you in past history, if you look at that fence right now, I mean, go out there and take a look at that fence. It's falling over. They literally have poles holding this fence up. So at some point, and whether it is within your, I doubt if it's with this committee or this board, but there's going to have to be some sort of obligation to maintain that fence. Properly maintained, I think it would go a long way toward reducing sound and noise, or sound and the privacy would be good.
Okay.
So I'm pleased to hear the 7 feet, thank you. But it wasn't in the plan, so.
Well, that's because it's separate from us. It's a building item,
Okay, well, we'll do it. Thank you.
But it was
Does that
asked.
answer it?
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. Any other final questions from the board? Yes, sir. Please step forward.
Thank you. My name is Spencer Isola. I've lived in Lake Forest for about 30 years. The last couple of years, I lived at 1026 Northwestern, which is a townhouse at Woodland and Western. It's called Regents Row. I've heard some comments about noise. One of the biggest shocks I had regarding noise when I moved to Regents Row was the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad. I've not heard anyone mention that. But that does provide a lot of noise. But when I moved in, I knew it was there. Second, I'd just like to say that from what I've heard about these restaurants, what I've heard sounds like it will be good for Lake Forest. A couple of years ago, I took a walk around Lake Forest. I counted about 25 empty stores at that time. I haven't done that in a couple of years. I know we've still got some empty stores, but I think it would be a good thing that if we could help any business people that would like to open up in Lake Forest, that would be a good idea. That's my only comment.
Great, thank you, sir.
I just have a question
Please step forward.
about the fence when they're replacing it.
Can you give your name,
Yeah,
please?
could you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Roberta Boyaris, and I live at 947 right behind the building. But when you're walking along the sidewalk, when they change the street and they change the sidewalk, it's right up against the fence almost, and all of the things that are planted along the fence, the bushes, are overlapping into the sidewalk, so that you have to be really careful when you walk on that sidewalk. You know, you have to watch where you're going, because I was kind of walking along and it knocked my glasses off. Because they're, you know, because when they change the street, they change the sidewalk, and it's up against, so if they're gonna change that fence, they need to, either trim those bushes.
Certainly.
Or do, you know,
Okay.
I don't know, they can't move the sidewalk, maybe, and they probably can't move the fence either, so.
I don't know.
Maybe they just have to trim them off.
Those are worth noting, and I'm certain city staff will bring it to the attention of the people reviewing the fence permit. Thank you so much. Any other questions from the public? Thank you. Do we have any further final questions from the board?
Would the petitioner, if the outdoor dining area was a deal breaker down the road as far as the plan commission is concerned, would you consider making that brick wall higher and solid along the parking lot?
Well, of course, we would consider making it higher. However, aesthetically, I don't think it's gonna look good, and we went back and forth with the architects and the landscape architect on it, and we came up with what would be a noise blocker and what would be something that is aesthetically pleasing to everybody in Lake Forest. I mean, just to put the patio there and throw up a wall and make it look like a jail, I don't think is gonna look good for the city. I think it would be better served if we did some vegetation that was higher, maybe some on the outside of the wall, and put some kind of a taller tree or bush or something that goes straight up and can block some noise, and that'll absorb sound as well. I think that would be a better solution.
I think it might be a recommendation here then to, you know, put that in your basket of considerations to possibly look at. And I think maybe one of the talks was the vegetation may be above the wall, so whether there be some additional trellis or any additional possible vegetation a little bit higher that would be sound absorbing might be something for you to consider.
Again, like Jeff said, I would rather see that than carry the mass of the brick.
Which would be
higher.
more sound absorbing than brick anyway.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
yeah, I would worry about, one of my concerns was I didn't want to create a big, massive brick wall.
Certainly.
Along the edge of that parking lot, so, both from patrons inside the patio area and visible, people looking at this as you're coming down, driving south down Western Avenue to see this big, massive brick wall, I think would not be conducive to the neighborhood, so.
Thank you. Okay. We will now take it to the board for discussion. Who would like to lead our discussion here at the board level?
Well, I think I think this new plan is a lot more detailed, which is what we asked for. Color samples, everything. I think you've done a wonderful job of providing at least me what I needed to be able to go forward with this. I think overall, aesthetically, not plan commission issues, but strictly aesthetically, it's a plus to the building. And I could approve it with some stipulations about further scrutiny over the signage, lighting, landscaping, the brick wall, depending on what the planning commission says. But overall, I think it's come a long way.
Okay.
I'll give some comments. I agree a lot with Maddie. I like John's idea of a water feature. I think that the fire pit from the neighbor's standpoint is going to be a little bit of a hurdle for the petitioners to hop. That might be a good alternative. It's not warm, but it makes noise, a mild noise, and can be relaxing. Anyway, I agree with Maddie. I do like the proposed changes. Looking at the memorandum from the Lake Forest Preservation, I'm not quite sure what they are suggesting other than as to what would look better. I mean, you know, just a straight roof or carry the brick up. I'm not sure where they're going with that. So anyway, I think with a subcommittee to look at the signage, I could go along with what has been proposed so far.
I do agree with Maddie. I think the petitioners brought in a lot more information. The materials were helpful to look at, and the drawings were certainly more complete. I would, however, at some point, I think it's important that there's more details on these canopies, because to me it seems like the canopies are different at the 9 Whiskey Bar as opposed to the canopy at the Bistro. One is like an open grid work, and the other one is closed, so I think that there should be some, I think there should be some detail so there's some consistency, so we really know what's going on there.
You want top views?
Yeah, I'd
right,
like
yeah.
top views of
Okay.
it, because my concern is that that canopy at the Whiskey Bar, you're gonna have all these different shadow lines, because the canopy is gonna have some members, and then there's the window buttons below and the doors, and then there's the grill of the fence. There just seems to be a lot going on there. Whereas I think in concept, to have that canopy as a simple, like monolithic looking item, you know, the simplicity of that was a nice idea to help modernize the building. I'm just not so sure about the detailing of it. And my other kind of concern is the stucco, the pattern, the texture of the stucco. To me, it looks like a drive-it kind of material, especially with the larger reveals. It doesn't really read as natural as I guess I would have liked it to be. But otherwise, I think the simplicity of it is fairly attractive for the building.
Yeah, on that, you know, the canopies, in your perspective, you kind of indicated a canopy that does look solid. I think that if you've got this on any kind of 3D program, it might be really helpful to see this perspective in somewhat of an aerial, or maybe even a worm's eye view or something, so we really get a handle on that. I think you clearly have us looking at maybe some minute details and how the sign might look from certain angles, but you've opened yourself up by opening up the canopy and you know, allowing us to see through it, suggest what are we seeing through, and how is the see-through part interplaying with the solid part. I think to Monica's point, it might be you know, some clarification, I guess, to decide what's better or worse is somewhat subjective, and I don't want to go there. I do have some opinions on this, and understanding that the historic foundation and the neighbors are probably looking for something that has more of a residential feel than this more of a modern and streamlined commercial feel. Obviously, we're not asking you to redesign an entire building, and you're working with the cards that are dealt to you on this mansard roof and this less than ideal building from whatever 60s, 70s genre. So I think in that aspect, you've done a great job of working with what you have. And I don't think you've, it's not like you did anything on the cheaps. I believe you've put an appropriate level of quality and detail in your design. Maybe contrary to some other board members, I'd almost like to see these reveals accentuated more so than you have, maybe even to the extent of some metal channels, really making that crisp, rather than just allowing some stucco mason's trowel to get that joint for you. I think that would look sloppy. I'd like to see it much more cleaner and much more accentuated. And I think that's probably a better detail for all in maintenance and everything else. I'm trying to keep any kind of thoughts that this is a restaurant versus a jewelry store, for that matter, and trying to deal with just aesthetics. But there is the neighborhood. There is this outdoor garden that brings your clientele out to the street. And from that standpoint, I am looking at it, what kind of noise and what kind of spillover are we having. I think the stockade fence, as one neighbor pointed out, helps, maybe not completely sufficient. I think the idea that the wall be higher on the north side is not out of the question, for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're screening your patrons from the headlights. I mean, there was an issue that came up on that, and that might be an appropriate self-interest reason for you to consider making that wall higher. I wouldn't want to suggest that it's, Statesville Prison and you need to put something there that's, so tall that it's not the cozy atmosphere that you're trying to design. But I think in a tall evergreen shrub, an arborvitae of some variety, that you can actually maintain in a hedge form, I think that would be ideal for everybody. And in going forward with this project, the more you can look to your neighbors as somebody that you're considering in your design process, that would be something that I would recommend you do. Otherwise, I mean, I think the materials you're using, the details, the sign, I think that's the least obtrusive approach to designing a sign that you can come up with, and I think that's wonderful. I think it's soft. I think it does what you want it to do, and it doesn't shout out in bright colors and what's happening inside. And that Lake Forest is going to find you. You don't have to present yourself in a loud advertising, marketing sort of fashion. Some of the details we brought up about the concrete being exposed, and I think that's something that you're all going to want to consider anyhow. I guess I don't see anything that I would suggest need to put the brakes on this, or don't suggest that it isn't an appropriate design alterations to otherwise less than desirable existing building in a difficult position or site in a neighborhood downtown, edge of trains, roads, parking. You've got a real challenge here, and I think you've come up with something that's nice and or nicely done. I would support this at this level. I'm assuming this is only for guidance to the Planning Commission and other decisions going forward, or because
we're looking for approval on this petition as proposed. Whether or not the entire project goes forward is still contingent upon other factions like the Plan Commission. So it is still up for approval.
I could support it with
Okay.
some clarification on what that ladder canopy is doing in a three-dimensional view that Monica is concerned about.
Yeah, I think that the consensus of the board is that we've come a long way, and it's been a big step, especially in the short time frame we've had already, so, you know, everyone applauds you for that. My concern is that we still have, each of the items that are before us have enough, you know, out there that's still a little nebulous to make a decision on. The stucco itself and the details, I think, is still open. The patio wall, which is significant, and the canopies. And then I think we all were kind of agreeing that maybe the signage would be put aside anyway. So maybe at this juncture, we should consider a subcommittee for this. I personally don't feel like we're at the point of saying go forward, because I think there are too many items open on each of the items before us.
I agree.
And it will probably change as it goes to planning commission and city council. Do we?
Yeah, and it would, and then might have to come back, so
Yeah.
yeah. Not that I'm trying to keep it in limbo, but I think that it would be in everyone's best interest if maybe we,
Yeah, and I don't think we should worry about what the planning commission is gonna do. I think we should worry about what the aesthetics of it and the questions that we have.
right, because it's before us as a
And
petition
I
to vote on.
agree with Peggy that there are some questions, they're not dramatic, but I think that the board would like them answered or shown something. So I agree with Peggy.
Should we, as a board, just briefly look at the staff recommendation? There's 5 points. The last 2 are suggested that those are to be approved and reviewed later. There's recommendation number 1 is to approve the alterations to the building. So maybe that's where we are starting to have problems right off the bat, right?
Right off the bat.
Okay, all right.
I do think a lot of the questions have been answered, but we have the canopy question. We brought up some things on the wall, fire pit, and some of those things I think should be considered. I think we're in a condition where we should continue this.
Okay.
And I think it's one of the things that this board is able to do well with. We make sure those details are paid attention to and
Right.
end up with a good product. Does city staff have any comments regarding that?
I think your direction is good. I think you've encouraged the petitioner. I think we're clear on the areas where you want further detail. And I do think the Plan Commission discussion will help us work with the petitioner to, if that outdoor patio is something that the Plan Commission supports, we can look at ways to really refine that wall without it becoming too massive. Because I think there's some options that we can look at there.
Certainly.
So if you want to appoint a subcommittee, I think that would be helpful for us to work through with the petitioner some of the details. But I think your direction to them that generally this is moving in a good direction is important, so that we can relay that to the Plan Commission as well.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. Okay. All that being said, would anyone care to make a motion regarding this petition? Please.
Okay, I'll give it a
Move it to
try.
subcommittee.
I move that we continue the petition for both the bistro and the whiskey bar, and put it into a subcommittee to work out the details for the patio wall, the signage, the canopies, some of the materials, the stucco sections. Is that about it?
Yeah. For consent agenda or returning in full vote again?
The subcommittee
I feel that
could make that recommendation
we have enough
later.
questions
Oh,
here
okay.
with the board that I would like to see it come back with the various things for a full board to look at.
Okay.
Okay.
Bring it back then.
I'll
After
second
subcommittee.
that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for your time. The next item on the agenda is the opportunity for the public to address the board on any non-agenda items.
Did you want to keep those? No, we can.
No, you may have
No,
them.
they're right.
All is right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Congratulations. Thank you.
We have returned all samples.
Yes, nothing.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Michael Rashowski, 648 Waveland Road. I've been a little out of touch lately, but I just heard great news recently that West Park was designated a National Historic District. And I don't know whether, again, the community in general knows that, but I totally missed it. But I just heard, and I was very, very excited about that. So I wanted to stop by and recognize the efforts, invite the community to celebrate what is an additional element to protect one of the most magnificent neighborhoods in our city, if not most cities, and to acknowledge the efforts of Kathy and her staff, who have worked probably for almost 10 years to make this to happen. I think the countless hours that they've done to document all the houses and the processes to go through that, I think that they deserve an incredible amount of thanks and acknowledgement from the community. So it's a wonderful thing, and Kathy, thank you and your staff for that effort.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
actually have
Rashevsky.
to state that it really was the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation. This was really a grassroots effort, and so it really is the foundation that deserves the recognition and thanks. But thank you.
I think it's fair to say that you've made sure the buildings look nice there too, so fair enough. Congratulations. Thank you. Do we have any additional information from staff for this evening?
Nothing further.
Excellent. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.